"Don't touch me," she warned. But the cowboy reached out anyway. The bullet grazed his shoulder before Jake Morgan even heard the shot. He dove behind the water trough as splinters exploded from the hitching post beside him. The woman stood 30 feet away, rifle still smoking, her finger tight on the trigger. "Don't touch me," she warned, but the cowboy reached out anyway. 3 hours earlier, Jake had ridden into Copper Ridge with nothing but dust in his pockets and a bounty hunter on his trail. The town looked half dead, most of the buildings boarded up, tumbleweeds rolling down Main Street like they owned the place. He needed water, supplies, and a fresh horse. What he found instead was trouble wearing a blue cotton dress. She was loading a wagon outside the general store when 2 men cornered her. Big men, the kind who thought size gave them rights. Jake recognized the type immediately. The taller one grabbed her arm. She twisted free and back toward the store entrance. That's when Jake made his first mistake. He stepped between them. The tall man's fist came fast, but Jake was faster. He ducked, drove his shoulder into the man's gut, sent him sprawling into the dirt. The second man reached for his gun. Jake's hand was already there, revolver drawn and cocked before the man's fingers touched leather. "Walk away," Jake said quietly. They walked. The woman stared at Jake with eyes that could freeze fire. She didn't say thank you. She just picked up her supply box and headed for the wagon. Jake followed her. That was his second mistake. "I don't need rescuing," she said without turning around. "Didn't look that way to me." She spun on him then, and he saw something in her face that made him stop. Not fear, not gratitude. Something harder, sharper, like a blade hidden in silk. "My name is Kate Sullivan. Those men work for Frank Holloway. He owns half this county and wants to own the other half, including my ranch. You just made yourself his enemy." Jake shrugged. "I've got enemies. One more won't matter. You don't understand. Frank doesn't just kill people. He destroys them. Slowly. He'll burn your life down and make you watch. Good thing I don't have much of a life to burn." Kate studied him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just decided something dangerous. "Can you ride?"
"Like the wind. Can you shoot?"
"Better than I ride. Then maybe you can help me. Frank Holloway killed my father 2 months ago. Made it look like an accident. Tomorrow he's moving a shipment of stolen cattle through Devil's Canyon. If someone were to stop that shipment, it would cost him $50,000 and his reputation. I'm planning to be that someone." Jake looked at this woman with fire in her eyes and a suicide plan in her head. Smart men would ride away. Jake had never claimed to be smart. "When do we leave?" "Midnight." That's how Jake Morgan found himself waiting in the darkness of Devil's Canyon 12 hours later, listening to the distant sound of cattle and knowing he'd probably die before sunrise. Kate crouched 20 yards away behind a boulder, rifle ready. The plan was simple. Stop the cattle drive. Don't get killed. Jake figured they'd manage one of those things at least. The riders appeared as shadows first, then shapes, then men with guns and hard faces, 15 of them guarding maybe 200 head of cattle. Kate had said there'd be 8. She'd been wrong. Jake raised his hand to signal retreat. That's when everything went wrong. A rattlesnake, coiled beneath the rock where Jake hid, struck at his leg. Jake jerked back, his boot scraping stone. The sound echoed through the canyon like a church bell. Every rider turned toward the noise. Guns came out. "Whoa," someone shouted. Kate's rifle cracked once, twice, 3 times. Men fell. The canyon erupted in gunfire and chaos. Jake rolled behind cover as bullets chewed the rock above his head. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was a massacre waiting to happen, and they were outnumbered 3-1. The cattle drive dissolved into chaos within seconds. Steers bolted in every direction as gunfire shattered the canyon silence. Jake squeezed off 3 shots, dropping 2 riders before scrambling to new cover. His mind raced through options, none of them good. They needed a miracle or a distraction, preferably both. Kate's rifle barked steadily from her position, each shot deliberate and deadly. The woman could shoot. Jake had to give her that, but skill only bought you so many seconds when you were this badly outnumbered. A bullet sparked off the rock near his head, showering him with stone chips. He ducked, counted to 3, then popped up and fired twice more. The riders were spreading out now, trying to flank them. Smart move. In another minute they'd be surrounded. Jake whistled sharply, a signal he and Kate had agreed on. It meant run. She didn't move. He whistled again. Still nothing. The woman was either brave or crazy, and Jake was starting to think it was both. A rider broke from cover, charging straight at Kate's position. She swung her rifle toward him, but another shooter had her pinned. Jake didn't think. He just ran, firing as he went. His first shot took the charging rider in the chest. The man tumbled from his horse and lay still. Jake dove behind Kate's boulder just as a volley of shots chewed up the ground where he'd been standing. "What are you doing?" Kate hissed. The plan was to hit and run. Plans change. You were about to get killed. I had it under control. A bullet whined past her ear, so close it stirred her hair. Jake gave her a look that said everything. She scowled but didn't argue. "We need to move," Jake said. "They're boxing us in. There's a cut in the canyon wall behind us. Narrow. Horses can't follow. We can lose them in the rocks." "Then let's go." They ran, staying low, using the boulders for cover. Bullets chased them, sparking off stone, kicking up dirt. Jake's lungs burned. His shoulder ached where the earlier bullet had grazed him, though he hadn't told Kate about that. Behind them, men shouted orders.
Horses whinnied.
The thunder of hooves grew louder. The cut in the canyon wall was barely 3 feet wide, almost invisible in the darkness. Kate slipped through first. Jake followed, his shoulders scraping rock on both sides. Behind them, riders reached the entrance and cursed. One tried to follow on foot, but Kate fired a shot that sent him diving for cover. They climbed. The cut became a steep ravine, then a treacherous path between towering walls of stone. Jake's boots slipped on loose scree. Once he nearly fell, caught himself on a jutting rock that tore his palm open. He didn't slow down. Neither did Kate. The sound of pursuit faded but didn't disappear. These men would follow, men like Frank Holloway's crew always did. After 20 minutes of brutal climbing, they emerged onto a plateau. The land stretched flat and empty under a ceiling of stars. Jake's horse was gone, probably scattered with the cattle. Kate's was tethered a mile back near where they'd hidden earlier. They were on foot, exposed, and still very much in danger. "We can't stop," Kate said between gasps for air. "Frank's ranch is only 5 miles from here. He'll have more men there. They'll be coming. Your place? 8, but they'll check there first. We need somewhere else." Jake thought fast. "There's an old line shack I passed on my way into town. Northridge. Abandoned. Nobody uses it anymore. That's 10 miles. You got a better idea?" Kate looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since the shooting started. Blood stained his shirt, dirt covered his face. His eyes were hard but steady. She made a decision. "Let's move." Not talking much, saving their breath. Behind them, distant torches appeared, searchers fanning out across the desert. Frank Holloway wasn't giving up. Jake hadn't expected him to. Men like Frank didn't survive by letting things go. The sky was turning gray when they finally reached the line shack. It was exactly as Jake remembered. 4 walls, a roof with holes, and nothing else. But it had cover and concealment, which was more than they had out in the open. Kate collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Jake checked the perimeter, then wedged the door shut with a broken board. "We're trapped here," Kate said quietly. "They'll find us by noon." "Maybe. That's more than I expected 3 hours ago. This is my fault. I should have scouted better. Should have known there'd be more guards." Jake sat down across from her. His shoulder throbbed. His head ached. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. But his mind was clear. "You want to know what I think?" "I think you've been fighting Frank Holloway alone for too long. I think you're tired and angry, and you're making mistakes because of it. I think that's how good people get killed." Kate's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me. I know you loved your father. I know losing him broke something in you. I know you'd rather die than let the man who killed him get away with it. That about cover it?" She stared at him with those fierce eyes, and for a moment Jake thought she might hit him. Instead, she did something that surprised them both. She started to cry, not loud sobbing, just quiet tears that tracked lines through the dirt on her face. "He was all I had," she whispered. "Frank took him over a water dispute, a creek that runs through my property. Frank wanted it. My father said no. 2 days later, his horse came back without him. They found him at the bottom of a ravine, broken neck. Everyone said it was an accident. But you knew different. His saddle cinch was cut halfway through. I found it later when I checked his gear. Someone weakened it just enough that it would break when the horse moved wrong. Frank's foreman used to work as a saddle maker. He'd know exactly how to do it." Jake absorbed this. It fit the picture he'd been forming of Frank Holloway. Smart. Ruthless. The kind of man who killed without getting his own hands dirty. "Why haven't you gone to the law?"
Kate laughed bitterly. "The sheriff is Frank's cousin."
"The judge owns the saloon where Frank drinks every night. The law doesn't work for people like me. It works for people like Frank. So you decided to hit him where it hurts. His wallet. It's all men like him, understand. Jake couldn't argue with that logic. He'd seen enough of the world to know that justice and the law weren't always the same thing. Sometimes people had to make their own justice. The question was whether they survived the making of it. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Heat began to seep through the walls. Jake dozed fitfully, his hand never far from his gun. Kate slept harder, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. When she woke, the sun was high and Jake was at the window, watching. "They're out there," he said without turning around. 6 riders. Circling. "They haven't found us yet, but they will." Kate joined him at the window. She counted the riders, measuring distances, calculating odds. We could wait until dark. Try to slip past them. They'll post guards. And they'll bring more men. No, we need to move now while there's still only 6. You want to fight 6 armed men? In daylight? When we're exhausted and low on ammunition? Jake finally turned to look at her. His face was serious, but there was something else there too. A kind of reckless certainty that made him dangerous. "I want to end this. You took a shot at Frank's operation. Now he's coming for you. This won't stop until one of you is dead. You know that, right?" Kate knew. She'd known from the moment she fired her first shot in Devil's Canyon. She'd crossed a line and there was no crossing back. Frank Holloway would hunt her until he won or until he couldn't hunt anymore. The only question was how it ended. "So what's your plan, cowboy?" It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who'd been in bad situations before and walked away from them. "We make them think we're running east toward town, split their attention. Then we double back, steal their horses, and ride straight to Frank's ranch." Kate stared at him. "That's insane. Frank's ranch will have 20 men. Maybe, but they'll all be out here looking for us. And Frank will be home alone, thinking he's safe. That's when you take your shot." The words hung in the air between them. Take your shot. Not metaphorically. Not later. Now. Today. "End it. You're talking about murder," Kate said quietly. "I'm talking about justice. There's a difference." "Is there?" Jake met her eyes. "That's something you'll have to figure out for yourself. But I'll tell you this. Men like Frank Holloway don't stop. They don't change. They don't suddenly grow a conscience. They just keep taking until someone makes them stop. Your father learned that. Now you have to decide if you're willing to do what it takes." The riders outside were getting closer. Time was running out. Kate looked at the man who'd stumbled into her life less than 24 hours ago. A stranger with blood on his shirt and secrets in his past. A man who'd risked his life for her without hesitation and without expectation of reward. She didn't know why he was helping her. Didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She couldn't do this alone anymore. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." They prepared quickly. Jake had 4 bullets left in his revolver. Kate had 6 rounds for her rifle. It wasn't much. It would have to be enough. They waited until the riders passed the shack on their sweep pattern, then slipped out the back. The sun hammered down, turning the desert into a furnace. They moved fast, staying low, using the terrain for cover. The horses were tethered in a shallow draw a quarter-mile away. 2 men stood guard. Jake and Kate approached from upwind, silent as shadows. When they were 20 feet away, Jake picked up a stone and threw it hard to the left. Both guards turned toward the sound. Kate stepped out and fired twice. Both men dropped. It happened so fast they never made a sound. Remorse tried to claw its way into Kate's chest, but she pushed it down. These men rode for Frank Holloway. They'd killed for him before. They would have killed her without hesitation. She grabbed the reins of the nearest horse and swung into the saddle. Jake took another. The remaining horses scattered as they rode hard toward the south, then cut west in a wide circle that would bring them to Frank's ranch from the opposite direction anyone would expect. They rode for 2 hours without stopping, pushing the horses hard. The land changed gradually from desert to grassland, from empty wastes to fenced ranges. Frank Holloway's territory. The man who owned it all lay ahead. Frank's ranch sprawled across a hillside like a small town. Main house, bunkhouse, barns, corrals, all of it built solid and expensive. But Kate was right. The place looked nearly deserted. Most of the hands were out searching for them. Only a few horses stood in the corral. Smoke rose from the main house chimney. Someone was home. They left the horses tied in a cottonwood grove and approached on foot. The sun was setting now, painting the sky orange and red, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, but his hands were steady. Beside him, Kate moved like a ghost, her rifle held ready. The main house had a wide porch and tall windows. Through one of them, Jake could see a man sitting at a desk writing something. Big man, gray hair, expensive clothes. Frank Holloway. The man who'd killed Kate's father. The man who'd stolen her future. He sat there comfortable and confident, believing himself untouchable. Kate raised her rifle. Her hands shook slightly. Jake put his hand on the barrel, gently pushing it down. "Not like this," he said quietly. "Not through a window. If you're going to do this, look him in the eye. Let him know why." Kate's hand steadied. She nodded.
They moved to the front door. Jake tested it.
Unlocked. Arrogant. They stepped inside together. The house was exactly what Jake expected. Rich rugs, expensive furniture, paintings on the walls, all of it bought with other people's suffering. They moved to the entrance hall, boots silent on thick carpet. Voices came from the study. Frank wasn't alone. Jake motioned for Kate to wait. He crept forward and peered through the crack in the door. Frank sat at his desk. Another man stood across from him, thin, nervous-looking, holding a ledger. The accountant, probably. They were arguing about money. Jake pulled back and shook his head at Kate. Wait. They couldn't do this with a witness. Not unless they planned to kill an innocent man, too, and Jake wasn't ready for that line. Kate understood. They settled into the shadows to wait. 5 minutes passed. 10.
The accountant's voice grew louder, more agitated.
Then the study door opened and the thin man hurried out, clutching his ledger, face red. He rushed toward the front door without looking around and disappeared into the evening. The door clicked shut behind him. They entered the study together. Frank Holloway looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face before settling into cold calculation. His hand moved toward the desk drawer, but Jake's gun was already out and pointing. "Don't," Jake said flatly. Frank's hand stopped. He leaned back in his chair, eyes moving from Jake to Kate. Recognition dawned slowly. Kate Sullivan. "I heard my boys were chasing you. Didn't expect you to come to me." Kate stepped forward, rifle aimed at Frank's chest. "Where else would I go, Frank?"
You killed my father. You tried to steal my land.
"You've been hunting me for 2 months. Did you think I'd just run forever?" Frank smiled. It was the smile of a snake. "Your father was a stubborn fool. Wouldn't listen to reason. Wouldn't sell. Sometimes accidents happen to stubborn fools. It wasn't an accident. You had someone cut his saddle cinch." Frank's smile never wavered. "Prove it." The words hung in the air like poison. Kate's finger tightened on the trigger. Frank saw it. His smile faded. For the first time, real fear showed in his eyes. "You won't do it," he said, but his voice was less certain now. "You're not a killer, Kate. You're a rancher's daughter playing at being tough. Put the gun down and maybe we can talk. Maybe I'll let you walk away. You killed my father, so kill me. Pull the trigger. See what it feels like to take a life. See if you can live with it." Kate's hands trembled. The rifle wavered. Jake watched, saying nothing. This was her choice. Her justice. He couldn't make it for her. "My father was a good man," Kate said quietly.
He helped his neighbors.
"He paid his debts. He never hurt anyone. You took him away from me because you wanted water rights. Water. He died for water." Frank shrugged. "It's a hard country. Only the strong survive." "No," Kate said. "Only the ruthless survive. And they survive because good people are afraid to stop them." "Then stop me?" Kate's finger curled around the trigger. One squeeze, and it would be over. Frank Holloway would pay for what he'd done. Justice would be served, but she'd carry that death with her forever. She'd become the thing she hated. A killer. Someone who took lives to solve problems. The moment stretched. Jake could see Kate's internal war written on her face. Part of her wanted to pull that trigger more than anything in the world. Part of her couldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Because doing it meant losing something essential about who she was. Outside, horses thundered into the yard. Men shouted. Frank's riders returning. The moment shattered. "Too late," Frank said with returning confidence. "My men are here." "You're finished." Jake grabbed Kate's arm. "We have to go. Now." They ran. Behind them, Frank shouted orders. The front door burst open as riders poured inside. Jake and Kate sprinted through the house, smashing through the back door into the gathering darkness. Bullets followed them, tearing chunks out of the door frame. They ran for the horses, knowing they wouldn't make it, knowing this was the end. That's when Jake saw the barn. Big structure full of hay. He changed direction, pulling Kate with him. They crashed through the barn door as more shots rang out. Horses inside whinnied and stamped. Jake spotted a ladder leading to the loft. They climbed fast. bullets sparking off the ladder rungs. In the loft, Jake looked around desperately. Hay bales stacked everywhere, barn doors at the far end. No other exits, they were trapped. Below, men entered cautiously, calling to each other, spreading out to search. Jake leaned close to Kate. When I start shooting, you run for that barn door. There's a hay wagon below it. Drop down, run for the horses, ride like hell. What about you? I'll hold them as long as I can. Give you a head start. Kate stared at him. You'll die, probably, but you'll live. That's what matters. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Jake smiled. It was a sad smile, full of regret for things that might have been. Maybe that's why. Because I don't know you. Because for once in my sorry life, I want to do something good without expecting anything back. Now get ready. He stood up, fired 3 shots at the men below. Chaos erupted. Kate ran. She reached the barn door, hesitated for 1 heartbeat, looking back at Jake. Their eyes met. Then she jumped. Jake kept firing. His gun clicked empty. He threw it down and grabbed a pitchfork leaning against the wall. Not much of a weapon against guns, but it was something. Men started climbing the ladder. Jake kicked the first one in the face, sent him tumbling back. The second one got halfway up before Jake jabbed at him with the pitchfork. The man screamed and fell, but there were too many. They came from both sides now, multiple ladders. Jake fought like a wild animal, all desperation and fury. He took down 2 more men before someone got behind him. Something hard crashed into the back of his skull. Light exploded behind his eyes. The world tilted. He fell, darkness rushing up to meet him. When Jake woke, his head felt like someone had driven a railroad spike through it. He tried to move and discovered his hands were tied behind his back. He was lying in the dirt of the barn floor. Men stood around him, guns drawn. Frank Holloway stood at the center, looking down at Jake with cold satisfaction. The girl got away, Frank said. My men are tracking her now. They'll find her. But you're here, and you're going to tell me who you are and why you helped her? Jake spit blood. Name's Jake Morgan, and I helped her because she needed help. That's reason enough. Frank kicked him in the ribs. Jake grunted but didn't cry out. You cost me $50,000 in cattle, Frank said. You killed 8 of my men. You attacked my home. I'm going to make you suffer for that. Jake laughed. It hurt. Everything hurt. But he laughed anyway. You're welcome to try. Frank pulled out a knife. The blade gleamed in the lantern light. He knelt beside Jake, pressed the blade against Jake's cheek. I'm going to cut you, Frank said quietly. Not enough to kill you, just enough to hurt. And I'm going to keep cutting until you scream. Until you beg. Until you tell me everything I want to know. Jake met Frank's eyes without flinching. Go ahead. But you should know something first. Kate Sullivan isn't running. She's getting help. And when she comes back, she won't be alone. You think you're untouchable. You think you own this county. But you made a mistake tonight. You showed her what you really are, and she's going to burn your entire empire down. Frank's face darkened. He raised the knife. That's when the barn exploded. Not literally exploded, but it felt that way. The barn doors burst open and riders poured in, at least a dozen of them, guns blazing. Frank's men scattered, returning fire. The barn became a war zone. Jake rolled to his side, trying to avoid the bullets tearing through the air above him. Through the chaos, Jake saw Kate. She was riding at the front of the group, rifle in hand, firing with deadly precision. Beside her rode men Jake didn't recognize. Ranchers, he realized. Kate's neighbors. People who'd suffered under Frank Holloway's rule and were finally fighting back. The battle was short and brutal. Frank's men, caught off guard, outnumbered, overwhelmed. They threw down their guns and raised their hands. Some tried to run and were cut down. In less than 2 minutes, it was over. Kate jumped from her horse and ran to Jake. She used her knife to cut the ropes binding his hands. He struggled to his feet, swaying, vision blurry. Kate steadied him. I thought you were dead, she said. Takes more than that to kill me. How did you do this? I rode to every ranch within 10 miles. Told them what Frank had done. Told them about my father. About the other people Frank had hurt over the years. They were ready. They'd just been waiting for someone to take the first shot. You helped me do that. Jake looked around the barn. Frank Holloway lay face down in the dirt, dead from multiple gunshots. His men were being rounded up, disarmed, tied. It was over. Really over. A gray-haired man approached. He was tall, weathered, with the look of someone who'd spent his life working the land. He extended his hand to Jake. "Name's Ben Carter. Own the Circle C ranch south of here. Kate told us what you did. Told us you risked your life to help her. That takes courage." Jake shook his hand. "Just did what needed doing. Well, we're grateful. Frank Holloway has been a cancer on this county for 10 years. Stealing land, intimidating people, bribing officials. We should have stopped him years ago. Why didn't you?" "Fear," Ben said simply. "Fear makes cowards of us all. But sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up. Once that happens, others find their courage too. Kate was that person. You helped her be that person." Jake looked at Kate. She was directing men, organizing the cleanup, taking charge. She looked different now. Stronger, more certain. Like she'd found something she'd lost when her father died. Purpose, maybe. Or justice. Or just the knowledge that she could fight and win. "What happens now?" Jake asked. Ben smiled grimly. "Now we clean house. Frank's cousin, the sheriff, will be voted out. The judge who took his bribes will face charges. Frank's ranch will be sold, assets distributed to the families he hurt. It'll take time, but we'll set things right." "And Kate?" "Kate keeps her ranch, keeps her land, lives her life without fear. That's what her father would have wanted." Jake nodded. That sounded good. That sounded like justice. Real justice, not the twisted kind that powerful men bought and sold. The night wore on. Prisoners were taken to town. The dead were wrapped in canvas. Dawn was breaking when Jake finally walked outside. His horse was where Kate had left it, saddled and ready. Time to move on. Time to disappear before his own past caught up with him. Kate found him preparing to leave. She stood a few feet away, not touching him, but close enough that he could see the emotions warring in her eyes. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "Have to. I've got a bounty hunter on my trail. Man named Carson. He's good at what he does. He'll find me eventually. Don't want to be here when he does. Don't want to bring trouble to you." "What did you do?" "To get a bounty on your head?" Jake smiled sadly. "I killed the man. Banker in Colorado. He was foreclosing on my family's ranch. My mother begged him for more time." He laughed in her face. "She died of a broken heart that winter. So I went to his office and I killed him. Some people called it murder. I called it justice. Turns out the law doesn't much care what you call it." Kate absorbed this. "How long have you been running?"
3 years.
"Maybe 4. Hard to keep track. You could stay. You could help us rebuild. Help me run my ranch. We could use a man like you." Jake wanted to. God, he wanted to. But he'd been running too long. He'd seen what happened to people who got close to him. They got hurt. They got killed. He couldn't do that to Kate. Not after everything she'd been through. "Can't," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Kate nodded. She understood. She didn't like it, but she understood. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. She pressed it into Jake's hand.
"There's $200 in there. Payment for helping me."
"For risking your life. Take it. Start over somewhere. Maybe find a place where Carson can't find you." "Kate, I didn't do this for money. I know. That's why you're taking it." They stood there in the pre-dawn light, two people who'd survived hell together, knowing they'd probably never see each other again. Jake wanted to say something profound, something meaningful, but all he could manage was a simple truth. You're going to be all right. You're stronger than you know. So are you, Jake Morgan. So are you. He climbed onto his horse. Kate stepped back, one hand raised in farewell. Jake touched the brim of his hat, a cowboy's goodbye. Then he turned his horse north and rode away without looking back. If he looked back, he might change his mind. Might stay, might let himself believe in second chances and new beginnings. But Jake Morgan had learned long ago that second chances were for other people. People with clean pasts and bright futures. People like Kate Sullivan, who'd fought for justice and won. He was just a ghost passing through, leaving no trace except memories that would fade with time. The sun climbed higher as Jake rode. The land stretched empty before him, full of promise and peril. Somewhere behind him, Carson the bounty hunter was tracking his trail. Somewhere ahead, a new town waited, new faces, new troubles. It was the life Jake had chosen, the life he deserved. But as he rode, he allowed himself one small smile. For one brief moment, he'd done something good. He'd helped someone who needed help. He'd stood up to evil and won. It wasn't redemption, but it was something, and sometimes something was enough. Miles passed. The morning grew hot. Jake's mind drifted to thoughts of water and rest. That's when he heard the horses behind him. Multiple riders, moving fast. He turned in his saddle and saw them. 5 men, maybe 6, riding hard in pursuit. His heart sank. Frank's remaining men, probably, coming for revenge. Jake urged his horse faster, but the animal was tired from the night's exertions. The riders gained ground quickly. Within minutes, they were within rifle range. Jake considered making a stand, fighting it out, going down in a blaze of glory. Then he recognized the lead rider, and his hand froze on his gun. Carson, the bounty hunter, had found him. The riders surrounded Jake, cutting off escape. Carson was a lean man with a scarred face and eyes like winter ice. He held his rifle casually, but Jake knew the man could shoot before Jake cleared leather. The 4 men with Carson were hired guns, mercenaries who worked for whoever paid them. "Jake Morgan," Carson said. "Been looking for you a long time." "Found me. Heard there was some excitement at the Holloway Ranch last night. Heard you were involved. That true?" "Might be." Carson smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "You got a talent for trouble. I'll give you that. But your luck just ran out. There's $5,000 on your head. Dead or alive." "I prefer alive, but I'm flexible." Jake considered his options. They weren't good. He could try to draw, get shot. He could surrender, get hanged. He could try to run, get shot in the back. None of them appealed. "Tell me something, Carson. You ever wonder if the men you hunt deserve what happens to them?" "I don't get paid to wonder. I get paid to bring in fugitives. What they did, why they did it, that's not my concern. The banker I killed, he destroyed my family. Broke my mother's heart. Should I have just let that go? Should I have been a good boy and accepted it?" Carson shrugged. "That's between you and your conscience. All I know is you broke the law. Law says you pay. Simple as that." Jake laughed bitterly. "Nothing's ever simple."
You know that.
"But simple or not, you're coming with me. Now put your hands where I can see them and step down from that horse." Jake complied slowly, mind racing. He needed a miracle. He needed Kate and her neighbors to come riding over the hill. He needed something, anything, to change the odds. But the horizon stayed empty. No miracles came. Carson dismounted and approached with iron shackles. Jake's future clicked shut with each step the bounty hunter took. 3 years of running, 3 years of freedom, ending here in the dust of a forgotten trail. It seemed fitting somehow. Poetic even. The outlaw caught by the relentless hunter. Just like all the old stories. Carson reached for Jake's wrists. That's when the gunshot rang out. Carson jerked back, blood spreading across his shirt. He fell, dead before he hit the ground. The hired guns spun toward the sound, guns drawn. 3 more shots cracked across the morning air. 2 men fell. The remaining 2 dove for cover, returning fire blindly. Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed Carson's fallen rifle and rolled behind his horse. From his new position, he saw her. Kate Sullivan, rifle smoking, riding hard from a ridge 200 yards away. She wasn't alone. Ben Carter and 3 other ranchers rode with her, guns blazing. The remaining hired guns realized they were outnumbered and outmatched. They threw down their weapons and raised their hands. The battle lasted maybe 30 seconds. When the dust settled, Carson and 2 of his men lay dead. The other 2 sat in the dirt, hands raised, looking terrified. Kate rode up to Jake. Her face was flushed, eyes bright with adrenaline. "Thought you might need help." Jake stared at her in disbelief.
You followed me?
"Why?" "Because you're an idiot. Because you were riding to your death and you knew it. Because I owe you my life, and I pay my debts." Ben Carter dismounted and examined Carson's body. He searched the corpse, found papers in the inside pocket. He read them carefully, then looked up at Jake. "Says here you killed Thomas Crane, banker of Denver. Says you walked into his office in broad daylight and shot him dead." "That's right. Says here Crane was being investigated for fraud. Says he'd been stealing from depositors for years. Says dozens of families lost everything because of him. This true?" "True enough." Ben folded the papers carefully. Then he pulled out a match, struck it, and set the papers on fire. Everyone watched as the bounty notice curled and blackened, turning to ash. "Far as I'm concerned," Ben said, "no bounty hunter came through here today. No wanted man neither. Just some drifters who got into a fight over cards. These 2 survivors will tell the same story. Won't you, boys?" The captured hired guns nodded vigorously. They'd say whatever kept them alive. Kate smiled. "So I guess you're not wanted anymore, Jake Morgan. At least not in this county. Jake couldn't speak. Something large and painful lodged in his throat. These people, these strangers who'd met him yesterday, were destroying evidence and lying to protect him, giving him the second chance he'd thought was impossible. Why, he finally managed. Because Kate trusts you, Ben said simply. Because I've learned that the law and justice ain't always the same thing. You did what you thought was right. Maybe it was right, maybe it wasn't, but you paid for it with 3 years of running. That's enough punishment in my book. We take care of our own around here, another rancher added. And after last night, you're one of ours whether you like it or not. Jake looked at these faces. Hard faces, kind faces, faces that had seen suffering and survived it. People who understood that life was complicated and sometimes good people did bad things for good reasons. He'd spent 3 years running from judgment. He'd never expected to find forgiveness. Kate extended her hand. Come on, cowboy. Time to go home. I don't have a home. You do now. My ranch needs work. You need a place to stay. Seems like a fair trade. Jake took her hand, let her pull him up behind her on the horse. As they rode back toward Kate's ranch with the sun climbing higher, Jake allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe even happiness. The ranch came into view as afternoon shadows grew long. It wasn't much. A small house, a barn that needed repair, corrals that wanted mending. But it sat in a valley of green grass, with mountains rising blue in the distance. Water ran clear through the creek Kate's father had died defending. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was everything Jake had stopped letting himself want. They spent the next weeks rebuilding. Jake fixed the barn roof, mended fences, broke horses that needed breaking. Kate managed the accounts, dealt with suppliers, planned for the future. They worked from dawn until dusk, too exhausted most nights to do anything but eat and sleep. But it was good work. Honest work, the kind that built things instead of tearing them down. Other ranchers stopped by regularly, bringing supplies, offering advice, checking on Kate. They included Jake in their conversations now, asked his opinion on cattle and weather and the 100 small decisions that went into running a ranch. He was becoming part of something, part of a community. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. One evening, about a month after the showdown at Frank Holloway's ranch, Jake and Kate sat on the porch watching the sun set. The day's work was done. Cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. Everything was quiet except for the wind and the distant call of a hawk. You happy? Kate asked suddenly. Jake considered the question. Was he happy? He'd spent so long running, so long focused only on survival, that he'd forgotten what happiness felt like. But sitting here in the dying light, clean and fed and safe, with a good woman beside him and honest work waiting for tomorrow, yeah, he supposed he was happy. Getting there, he said. Good. Because I'm going to need your help with something. What's that? I want to expand the ranch. Buy some of Frank's old land that's being auctioned off. Build it into something my father would be proud of, but I can't do it alone. You've got neighbors, got friends. They'll help. I know, but I want you. As a partner. Equal shares, equal say. We build this together. Jake turned to look at her. In the fading light, she was beautiful. Not the desperate, angry woman he'd first met, but someone confident and strong and at peace with herself. Why me? Because you're the only person who's ever stood beside me without asking for something in return. Because you risked everything to help me and expected nothing. Because I trust you, and because, she paused, her voice softer now, because I'd like you to stay. Not just for the ranch. For me. The words hung in the air between them. Jake felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 3 long years beginning to thaw. He'd thought he was dead inside. Thought he'd killed all the soft parts of himself that could feel and hope and love. But Kate Sullivan had shown him different. I'm not a good man, he said quietly. I've killed people. I've done things I'm not proud of. I've got a past that could come back any time. I know. I don't care. We've all got pasts. Question is whether we're going to let them define our futures. Jake took her hand. It was calloused from work, strong and sure. Like everything else about her. Equal partners? Equal partners. Then I'll stay. Long as you'll have me. Kate smiled. It was the first real smile Jake had seen from her, full and genuine and bright as sunrise. She leaned her head against his shoulder. They sat like that as darkness fell, 2 survivors finding peace in each other's company. In the distance, coyotes called to the moon. The wind whispered through the grass. And for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morgan felt like he'd come home.